It's JD Hafferin, and today we have got ourselves a nice little treat as we cross things over because the Cardinals and the Padres are set to begin a 3-game series tonight in San Diego. So we've got the host of Locked on Padres, Javy Reyes, joining us today. Javy, hello there, sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great, man. It's been a past pretty good couple weeks, everything's going pretty well. Both non-sports and sports wise. Football's been very, very wild. It's fun to have that back. And then you've got the chaoticness known as Major League Baseball playoffs and the wild
Yeah.
card race and everything. And I know it's such a cliche to say like this is an important series. It'll be like May and people are like big series tonight. And
Yeah.
it's big in terms of like maybe individual players and like maybe it's fun, right? You're excited and you're like, okay, cool. It's a Grom versus blank tonight. But in terms of like all encompassing series that like matter for the course of the sport, and who makes the playoffs, it's very hard for me to look at people seriously when they're like, it's Yankees Rays tonight, big series, and it's like June. It's like, no, it's not. Like, relax. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Things are gonna happen. It gets crazier. But now, I mean, with these two teams playing each other, and I believe that the Cardinals bested the Padres the last time. I think it was a sweep actually. It's gonna be really important because the Padres have the Brewers on their heels. My enemy, the Milwaukee Brewers, my arch nemesis of baseball this year. So
Yeah, yeah. The what the series means to both of our teams, obviously with 2 weeks remaining in the season, is on your side, the Padres are still fighting to stay alive in that wild card spot. So
mhm.
it's massive that you guys are winning as many games as possible. Where on the Cardinals side of things, we're just happy to be playing somebody that is of playoff worthy contention because we've been spending a lot of time against teams like the
Tell me
Reds
about it, man.
and the Pirates and the Cubs and the Nationals. And there's part of me that thinks that the Cardinals are actually bored playing these teams because they're
Mm.
not playing all that well against them recently. Like we just had a series against the Reds this past weekend, and they had to play 5 games in 4 days. Okay, which is not fun because you got to do the doubleheader thing.
Mhm.
Everybody's exhausted before you even get to Sunday, but you still got to play the games. And when you're playing a team like the Reds, which they're not playing for anything anymore, they're just playing not to lose 100 games. There's something about it that I feel like has made the Cardinals team become a little stagnant moving forward. Whereas the Padres, you guys got a lot going on where you need to win each and every game moving forward so that you can stay in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. The Padres, they're in this weird spot where they are. I mean, man, the way that the vibe for this team vacillates from nightmare fire AJ Prowler immediately after the season ends to, oh my gosh, Slam Diego is back. It's just every night, man. Like it's every night, and it started. This past series against the Diamondbacks that the Padres had. They lost the first one because they got blanked by again. I don't know what it is with the Padres' weakness is first time starters that play for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've
Yeah.
gotten no hit by one and they didn't score any runs against the other two. I don't know what it is. If you're making your major league debut and you pitch for the Diamondbacks, you kill the Padres, and then they bounce back, right? They put up a 6-1 win, they put up a 2-0 win. Josh Hader finally does something. He's also been really annoying. And yeah, again, Brewers my arch nemesis this year for a variety of reasons. And then you have, the 12-6 victory or whatever it was. It's just a very hard team to predict. They're very weird. They have all this talent and stardom, and then sometimes they get blanked by bad pitching.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they go out and you're like, oh my God, Yu Darvish he's Yu Darvish. He's doing great things. And Joe Musgrove is up and down, but he's great now. And Blake Snell, him and his weird, goofy interviews that he does. He's also too sometimes. So it's one of those teams that like it's hard to capture them with certain stats. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of
Sure.
hard to understand what is going on over here because there's so many great players, but then a lot of like, what the what? Like, how is Trent Grisham still starting for this team? He's batting under 200. Like, what? How is this
Yeah.
happening? But I mean, it's their best players trying to lift them up and carry them to the fish line, and hopefully they can do that at the end of this year.
Now, one of those great players that you guys were able to acquire, you mentioned Hader. The trade deadline was a big deal for both of our teams
Oh yeah.
because you guys got the big names with Hader,
Mhm.
and you got Brandon Drury and that Juan Soto guy. Like, who would be interested in
Yeah.
that guy? The Cardinals
Yeah.
apparently were very much interested in trying to acquire Juan Soto. Maybe it was smoke and mirrors. We don't know, because it's definitely not something that the Cardinals management would normally do, is to trade a ton of prospects to go get one
Mhm.
guy. And a lot of people, including myself, felt that even getting Juan Soto on this team, on this Cardinals team, didn't necessarily fix what the problem was that was going on with them, which was starting pitching. And when they didn't get Soto, like, we were all excited because nobody knew. Nobody knew if they were going to get him or not. And it was weird that we were still talking about it on
Mhm.
August 2nd. And then the bomb drops that the Padres got him instead. Part of me felt a little bit of relief, because now they could focus on what we thought was going to be the problem, which was starting pitching. They go out and they get Quintana and they get Montgomery from the Yankees, who's been really, really good. But I want to hear what it was like on your side of it, because we got shot down for Juan Soto. You did not. You guys landed him, and then you were able to make some extra moves as well. What was it like that day, roller coaster wise, for you guys during the process of getting Juan Soto in a Padres uniform?
This is this right. I'm gonna try and phrase all of my thoughts as much as I can. The first thing is obviously the shock, right? Not gonna lie, I was working that day, maybe a little bit less than I usually do, just allegedly, just a little bit, maybe checking my phone a little bit throughout the day, and it was funny because then I'm living at home and my mom's in the other room on this phone call, and I have to contain like the craziness that I'm just seeing these Jeff Passan notifications, and leading up to that point, my thing was you hear about the Cardinals, you hear about the Dodgers. My stance before the trade deadline was very much like I didn't think the Padres needed to trade for Juan Soto. I thought that there were some other ways to patch up the team, and that keeping all of their assets, keeping those farm pieces might, prove worthy down the road. And for everybody who wants to yell at me for saying that, well, you guys wanted to trade them for Brian Reynolds back in the offseason, and then you didn't know Juan Soto would be available. Things just kind of happen. And I think people
Yeah.
forget sometimes that, like, who knows? Shane Bieber all of a sudden could be available this summer, right? It just
Mhm.
things happen, right? So it's nice to just have that in your back pocket. That being said, I was still thrilled about the trade. It was still awesome. I mean, this is the guy. I mean, he's a generational talent, right? People have said that a lot. And then, just from afar, I did kind of respect things that the Cardinals did. I have to say, just say about the team, like my big beef with the Brewers is that they don't try, and they're just kind of stumbling into wins. They have these guys that hit home runs, not for average, barely even getting on base, to be honest with you. And then they've got good pitching, and then they're like, okay, our big acquisition that we're going to convince our fans will save the day is Andrew McCutchen. No disrespect whatsoever. He's a good player. He's very fun. I love his alter ego that he does and whatnot. But it's just very. Why is this team not in on some of these other players, especially since they haven't been there in a long time? And with the
Yeah.
Cardinals, look, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I would have looked at the deadline as, look, it's the best defensive team like out there, pretty much, right? Like you almost don't even need, dare I say, an elite starting pitcher. And instead they go out there and say, you know what, we like our offense. Goldschmidt is probably going to win the MVP. You've got Arenado, who the Padres fans hate for some reason. I don't really get why, to be honest. And then you have just the spirit power of Yadi Bolita, Puerto Rican power, right? And then you've got Albert Pujols, and they decide, you know what? Forget the Castillo thing. That's a little bit too pricey. Let's just go get two guys that we kind of like, because we think our defense can also just maybe cover up some
Mhm.
issues. And Montgomery and Quintana, I haven't checked Quintana in a while, but like I love those moves.
Yeah.
And I think it's weird that Padres fans, especially who may respond to me, that I think it's weird that we literally just saw last year that the team that won the World Series was the one that took a bunch of pot shots at guys at the deadline. They just said, this guy, pretty good player. He's definitely underperformed. Let's give up nothing for him. You know what I mean? Like, it literally just happens last year. You saw that
Mhm.
with Eddie Rosario and Jorge Soler and Jock Peterson and the guy who used to play on the Marlins, Adam Duvall. There we go. Adam Duvall. Like, they just said, let's get all these low cost guys. That's why I love what the Cardinals did. I think
Yeah.
when you're a team that doesn't have stars, it is abhorrent for you not to do anything, right? That's why I don't like the Brewers, because I think their stars are on the pitching side of things, and they
Yeah.
decide not to do anything with their offense. When you're the Cardinals, it's like, well, we do have the stars. So instead, let's address what we need, which is starting pitching, where our 46-year-old is trying to carry our rotation. And it's working. It's working. But, I don't know what it was like from your perspective, but for me, I know some people thought they lost the deadline. Yes, maybe the rumor about they just couldn't include Carlson. Yeah, that makes it seem a little silly. But at the same
Mm,
time, it's not like they did nothing. I love the moves and
yeah.
they've worked for them. And I think they have a shot. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think it was just that hearing the name Juan Soto and he
yeah.
might be a Cardinal, and when it doesn't happen, all of us were let down in some way, shape, or form because
Mhm.
it's kind of it's like the balloon, the air coming out of the balloon. You're just like, oh no. Okay, well, what are we going to do now? Because now today's the day. We got to make some deals if we're going to make this team better. And the names like Quintana and Montgomery, they're not
Mhm.
sexy names. And
Yep.
most people didn't even know who Montgomery was. And they probably wouldn't have known who Quintana was if he hadn't been in the division. And the Cardinals had shown some interest in him before, but they needed pitching. They needed left-handed pitching and some relievers. And that's what they went out and got. A couple of other moves that were made. Chris Stratton, who came over in the Quintana deal, has been very useful coming out of the bullpen as a right-hander. He can just chew up some innings. And then Jojo Romero from the Phillies, which was a very under-the-radar move that they made. They traded basically our backup shortstop. They ship him over to Philadelphia, a good defensive player, but can't hit a lick. And they get another left-hander who's 25 who can throw upper 90s, and they bring him in, and he's been pretty darn good too for them. So talking with Sully, and he's mentioned that he thought the Cardinals won the trade deadline in the end because
Mm.
Soto hasn't exactly lived up to expectations that people thought he was going to do when he got in San Diego. Has there been some frustration among the fans with his lack of production, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's a lot of this is where it gets really interesting, and where the other layers of it. On top of what I just said about, I don't think people paid attention to how baseball is won, and you don't just need superstars. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, I know. I'm not prospect hugging. My thing is, it's not like the Padres don't have stars. Like they do. If they did not have Manny Machado on this team and they did not have some other players, then I'd understand if they're like, well, what are we doing here? But they
Yeah.
do. But then there's the other problem, which is obviously Fernando Tatis Jr., his whole thing,
Yeah.
right? And with
Mm-hmm.
that injury, there is like I still think that it's perfectly possible that AJ probably pulls the trigger, but you have to wonder if they knew Tatis was not going to be here for the rest of the season. Maybe do they hold off on the Josh Bell and Brandon Drury side of things? Because then they say, all right, since those guys are only rentals anyway, maybe we just want to be competitive this year and go for it, but not like go after those guys. Possible, right? And then there's that small percentage chance of like maybe there's some weird numbers out there that they know that we don't know. That Tatis in front of Soto would make the OPS go by 50 or whatever it is, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
figured, when you have that Tatis Soto Machado thing, that is really what they were thinking. So clearly that has to at least be partially part of this. You know what I mean? Like at least taken into consideration that they didn't know that they weren't going to have their star shortstop. That all being said, Soto he looks really uncomfortable at the plate. He's still got an incredible eye. That has not changed whatsoever. His on base is still over like 380. Like he's still amazing in that respect. But his slugging percentage has been down at like 100 points for the most part. His batting average is low. He just hit a home run the other day. Hopefully, he can get things going. But it's going to be hard for the guy since he hasn't had a lot of luck with batting average on balls in play, and he just hasn't been making the best contact against a really well-run Cardinals team with good defense that I don't know if this is the get right series for him. It would be awesome. I would very much appreciate him to look like a superstar again, but it has been disappointing for sure. And Padres fans are getting frustrated, and I understand it. I really do because it's become a long line of jokes where it's like right when you join the Padres, you just fall apart. You know what I mean? It's just you can't be good here. It's just impossible. Blake Snell's first year, ERA over 5. Darvish
Yeah.
just implodes in the second half, right? Like there's so many players that have just gone downhill from Adam Frazier to Mike Clevenger to Josh Hader for a bit, right? Like
Yeah.
so there's been a lot of doom and gloom that it's always just seems to be a miss. Even Josh Bell and Brandon Drury have been pretty inconsistent and not very effective players in the lineup. So it's just again, you see this? It's a circus. I can't even stop talking. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's all good. Well, I want to get into the preview for what we've got like pitching rotation wise in
Mhm.
the series, which will start tonight. So we'll get into that next here on our crossover episode of Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Padres. But first, let's talk about our friends over at LinkedIn, Javy,
Mm.
because people need jobs. And people who have job openings need to be using LinkedIn so they can get the right people hired. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team, and you can do it faster and for free with LinkedIn. So what you need to do, very simple stuff. You add your job, you add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and that helps spread the word that you're hiring as a business. They've got simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. To take it back to what the Cardinals did at the trade deadline, they needed a left-handed starting pitcher. So they went out and looked for left-handed starting pitchers, and that's kind of what LinkedIn can do for you. It'll narrow things down for you, make it easier, and that's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to, not the ones that are going to waste your time. You don't want to have to deal with them. You want the right people for your job, and you want to do it fast. Okay. You want to drag your feet. So post your job for free, and you can do that at LinkedIn.com/locked on MLB. That's LinkedIn.com/locked on MLB to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
Well
Once
done.
again, we've got our crossover episode here. It's Javy Reyes from Locked On Padres. I'm JD Haffern from Locked On Cardinals, and we're having our first crossover episode together because I just took over for Lucas full time in August. So right at the trade deadline, I got thrown right into the fire when all of this was going on between the
That must be
Cardinals.
nuts. Oh my God. Yeah. I started at least like at the before the season. Like, could you imagine? It's like, hey,
Oh no.
welcome. And you might be trading your top overall prospect, Jordan Walker, as well as a couple other things for Juan Soto. Have fun.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Like, that's
Oh,
nuts.
by the
Yeah.
way, we're going to throw in an all-star break where Albert Pujols is going to be treated like a god during the home run derby
Yes.
and then go
We
for
haven't even talked about
700.
him. Yes. It is
he's
so fun. What is he at? 698 or 99?
he's at 698 right now, so he's too
Okay.
short. And I was talking with Ethan from Locked On Pirates because he just creams the Pirates over his career. And I told him we made predictions when we had our series with them, and I was like, all right, I'm going to say October 1st is when he pops 700. It'll be Yadier Molina bobblehead day at Busch
Mhm.
Stadium in front of the home fan. So that was my bet. He just thinks it'll happen against the Pirates because he torments them all the time, like just
Mhm.
constantly is hitting home runs off of them. Um, it comes to like your pitching staff and whether or not he'll do it anything against the Padres because we know that he does much better against left-handers. That's his
Mhm.
thing. Right-handers can chew him up pretty good, but lefties he has a better chance of success against. And this week we've got our 3-game series, and it looks like you've got Clevenger set to go tonight against our guy, our old guy, Uncle Charlie, Mr. Adam Wainwright, and then you're going to have a lefty Blake Snell who's going to
Yep.
pitch on Wednesday, and then your righty Musgrove on Thursday. So you mentioned earlier, Clevenger hasn't been everything you guys have wanted. Obviously, coming back from injury after you guys made the trade,
Mhm.
he was hurt when you guys traded for him,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly. So, what's that been like, and what's his problem been in your eyes?
Yeah. Well, first of all, he wasn't hurt when they did trade for him, which is he
Okay,
might as well have been because it was only a few starts and then the postseason
okay,
came because that was the 2020 season. But with Clevenger, I was making fun of the Padres earlier and how often they've missed trades. I think Clevenger's a little bit different, just in the sense that look, anyone can get hurt. I think it's unfair. This is a guy that at the time they acquired him, it was only like Greinke, Verlander, Scherzer, DeGrom, those pitchers that had like better ERA numbers in the past few seasons than him. Like seriously, he was that effective. And you could say he was over pitching and that his FIP or blah 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 blah. Whatever. I don't care. I think that his numbers were really legit that time. And while his delivery and his moving around and stuff is kind of maddening at sometimes, he can be really effective. So the Padres, the trade definitely hasn't gone well for them, but at the same time, you didn't know he was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, coming off that second Tommy John surgery, he's been really rough. He's been one of the worst qualified pitchers over the last month or something like that. He got the highest FIP in baseball. He is not striking out batters at all, which is really, really disturbing. He is the type of pitcher that, granted, the Padres' top three has been very good, so it hasn't bitten them as much. Same thing goes for Sean Manaea, who's I think still rocking an ERA above 5 right now. Those guys on a lot of other teams would be just killing them right now. But thanks to the Padres' top three, you mentioned Blake Snell. He's got, I believe, the best strikeout rate in baseball in the second half, or at least one of the best. I imagine DeGrom is doing okay or whatever. Yeah, I saw today it's like 44% strikeout rate, 2% walk. It's like, what?
It's nuts, dude.
It doesn't make
It's
any
nuts.
sense.
I can't imagine how much money that dude is going to make after this
Oh my
this season.
gosh.
It's going to be
Ooh, that's
bonkers.
gonna be fun.
Not that he's going anywhere, and not that the Mets can't afford it. I'm just curious to see what that number is going to be, because it's going to be it's going to be up there.
Yes, it is, man. Yes, it is. But with Clevenger, he's definitely he's not the weakest link in the rotation. I think it's just you're hoping that a guy who comes back from an injury like this, that okay, he doesn't start off great immediately. That's okay. That's to be expected. Maybe he's going to be a guy who can help us down the stretch, and that has not been the case. So it's possible that sometimes these injuries, when you have multiple injuries like this, you just lose something, even with the advancements in the technology and all that. So Clevenger's the
Yeah.
type of guy the Cardinals could certainly beat up against, even if Sir Albert the Machine against him necessarily. But yeah,
Well,
man,
he
it's
he
and the
might
Cardinals
be
have a
he
really
might
tough
he
lineup. So
Yeah, he might. It's because Ali, our Marmal, our manager, has said repeatedly, because for most of the year he was only starting against left-handers, but as the push for 700 has gotten
yeah,
closer, he's like, I can't not start him and give him every opportunity to hit 700, even though he struggles against right-handers, and he's clearly. I think pressure might be getting to him a little bit. I mean, it's got to be weird, because I've talked with people about this. These guys play in front of big crowds all the time, but not every time does it, when you come up to the plate, does every single person in the stands get up out of their chair, but then they all do this to you too with their phones, and they're all looking at you.
yeah,
And
man.
everything's recording, and I can't even imagine the pressure that he feels. And this past series with the Reds, he had one hit. It was a home run, and it was a
Yeah.
bomb, but the rest of the time he was over 13. So I don't know if it's getting to him a little bit, but I can understand why he might struggle coming down the stretch here with all of that happening. And against right-handers, he's had a tough time all of the time. So that's not really anything new. But the rest of the team, I could see them feasting on Clevenger, the way his numbers have been. And on the other side of things, Adam Wainwright, in his only appearance against you guys this year, played pretty well. He was in May 31st, 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, just 2 hits, shutout. So that's what you guys are looking at tonight. As he and Yachty just had their record set, where they were the most ever battery mates in the history of Major League Baseball as far as starts. So their little record pressure is out the window. So now it's game on for Adam Wainwright. Moving on to tomorrow's game, you did mention this guy, and that would be Blake Snell, who had a tough go at it when he came back. It was weird. He was a weird guy after COVID. Like, you remember he kind of did that video, and he's like, I don't want to be sick and do this and that. This is my life we're messing with.
Yeah.
And, he's in San Diego, and it looks like he's finally kind of pieced things together and has gotten comfortable with you guys.
Yeah, he's had a really great second half. And last year he started figuring things out in the second half too. It seems that the more he leans toward a fastball slider heavy approach instead of trying to mix the curveball and changeup in there, that it seems to portend of greater success. And the other thing with him is I will say though, for this Cardinals matchup, very disciplined lineup. Obviously, you've got some really good studs in this game. The key is going to be just how long does he last into the game, and if you could get into the Padres bullpen. I think that Snell's strikeout stuff is 100% legit. I think that form of him is back. It's awesome. But it's possible, what if it's like 4 innings and a run, right? And that's not awful. Don't get me wrong. It's fine. But it's like, you wish you could have more of that from your starting pitching, especially since the Padres bullpen has been very shaky and very weird. Even that's not even counting the Josh Hader implosions, who, might be past his prime at this point. We'll see. He's looked a little bit better lately, but There's just a lot of unknown in that bullpen that is very scary. So I think that's the key for the Cardinals in that one, for sure. As it won't be, don't be concerned about necessarily hitting Snell. Your thing is, can you get him to walk a few batters? His walk rate is down. He's been much better at that lately. He strikes out a lot of guys, but if you can get him to he's really inefficient. So if you're able to get into that, that's how you beat Blake Snell. And it's not an impossible thing to do.
Miles Michaelis will be going up against Snell. Snell, by the way, was who Wainwright went up against in that game at the end of May, and he pitched fine, 6 innings, 2 runs, looked good, but ended up, not beating Wainwright on that day. But that happens when you have the other guy throwing shutouts. But Miles Michaelis, a guy, right-hander, was an all-star this year, which a lot of people don't remember. He ended up making that team at the end of it all, and he's. This second half of the season, he's been a little iffy trying to figure things out. I kind of warned people about that he hadn't thrown this many innings in a really long time. He's been hurt a lot over the last couple of years. And now he's sitting at a record of 11-12 on the year, and it's been the long ball that's gave him some trouble recently. Home runs in just about every game, multiple ones, 2 for the Reds, 1 against the Pirates, 3 against the Reds. So that might be something that, with your sluggers that the Padres have in the lineup, something they can feast on, because that's been his thing. He'll throw a lot of strikes, but sometimes he'll miss over the plate, and you can hit a long way off Miles Michaelis if you get a hold of one.
It's true, but the problem is that the sluggers in the lineup. I agree. I could see Manny Machado doing it. Obviously, he's the best player of the damn team right now. And maybe if Soto wakes up, and starts coming around, I could see it. But the rest of the Padres lineup, power is not. The Slam Diego thing feels like so long ago. Like it really does. It's really sad to see. I mean, currently they're 23rd in slugging percentage and 20th in home runs, just for a good perspective there. So if Michaelis was going to have a good start, in the sense of you're saying he's prone to the long ball, it could happen. He might give up a 2-run home run to Manny Machado, and maybe Jake Cronenworth who is just like the ultimate. Do you want to be good this year or no? Make up your mind, because right when we think you're catching fire, you just go right back to you just regress a whole bunch. But so that's my thing. So Michaelis, yes, I understand the home run thing, but I'm telling you, man, this Padres lineup, whenever you see a home run hit, it feels like way too rare, considering that this is a team that is probably one of the front runners for one of those wild card spots, 81 and 66. They've got all those stars. Not nearly as much power as you think, especially for people who don't follow the team.
Yeah, you would think with, you mentioned the Soto Machado, Josh Bell is a huge man.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, you got
it's like the Predator. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then when you hear him speak, he's the nicest dude you've ever heard talk in your life. He's so well spoken. It's just like, wait,
I love it when that happens.
Why is that voice coming out of you? It doesn't seem like it would fit. You expect some deep, big man voice, and no,
I
it doesn't
expect that
come
out
out
of
that
every
way.
athlete too. You know what I mean? Like every single time I see any athlete, I'm always expecting a very serious voice or whatever. Like I remember when I heard Tim Duncan's voice for the first time. That
Wait,
bugged
Tim
me
spoke?
Yeah, it was like I knew he wasn't gonna have I knew he wasn't very animated, but even still, I was like, "What? This can't be true." When Patrick Mahomes, his voice and everything.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the first time I heard Mahomes speak, I said, "No way, that's not his real voice. There's no way he didn't just suck helium right before he did this interview." And I feel like it's gotten better. I don't know if he worked on it and in something where he started smoking to make it deeper.
Maybe people started making fun of him, which is messed up. And they started. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing to mock with him is maybe the ketchup, the macaroni and cheese. But
yeah, that's weird.
In fairness, it's weird, but I haven't tried it, so I don't want to be too mean. You know what I mean? Because that's not the craziest food combo we've ever heard.
No,
you know
no.
There's some you know that Twitter account that's like effed up pizzas?
Yeah.
Yeah, that account. That one makes the Mahomes thing look like you're just getting a side of fries. Like it's not the worst and craziest thing I've ever heard. But
no, we grew up actually with ketchup on our mac and cheese in our household, and I'll tell you why. So this is where it came from. Is my grandfather, who was both a survivor of World War I and II, said because the food that they had back in the day was so crappy when they were at war that they put ketchup on everything to give it flavor. And that's how they got into the habit of putting ketchup on all kinds of things like macaroni and cheese. So that's where it started.
How about that? Look at
Yeah.
this, man. Locked on crossover. You get everything. You get history lessons, mac and cheese. It's everything, man. That's what we do
we
out
get,
here.
we got you covered here on the Locked On Network. Final game we've got on Thursday. It'll be Joe Musgrove taking the mound against Jack Flaherty, who coming back from injury struggles to throw strikes. It's about all I could say for it. We're just glad he doesn't get hurt every time he comes out in pitches, because it's been a rough year for Jack. He usually has one bad inning. Like, he'll look good for like 3 or 4, and then something goes off. Like, he just kind of, I don't know if it's a concentration thing or his mechanics get out of whack, but all of a sudden he'll give up like 2 walks, hit a guy, and then there's 3 runs in all of a sudden. So Musgrove on the other side, though, Musgrove, he's been a steady guy for you guys, yeah?
Yeah, from the majority of the year until he got paid, unfortunately. He did have a really great start, 8 innings, no runs. I think struck out 6 against the D-backs, which was nice. But for the most part, he has also been pretty rough. He has, oh, man, it's been really watching him. I believe in the second half, if I'm mistaken, if I got my little stat here in front of me, he has the worst hard hit percentage in baseball, which isn't great. Not very good.
Oh, huh.
Now, that can be misleading because, in general, people who are throwing off speed stuff like he does, if you do manage to make contact, those pitches will go pretty far, especially like a curveball, right? So that can be a little bit misleading for someone like him. But even still, it shows you they're hitting him harder than usual. But I really think that overall, this is just a prolonged slight regression. It happens for a little bit longer than we would have liked. I think he was due for regression. All right, hopefully this Diamondbacks start is a sign that things are turning around. And knowing the competitor he is, knowing how much he loves San Diego and taking that contract and everything, I think he might even be pushing a little bit. I think he might be pressing. I think he's trying to ball out and be like, yeah, that's right. I earned this contract and everything. It's like, bro, like, we know. But maybe that's what's going on. Maybe he's pressing a little bit too much, and that could be a possibility. So I'm not too concerned with him, but he's definitely a little bit of a vulnerable spot. But it wouldn't surprise me. And Jack Flaherty type of guy who, first of all, I root for. I like him with off field stuff, and honestly, when he's on, he is very fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's the type that it won't shock me if he's awesome in the postseason. I can't explain why, but it's just that type of nonsense that happens
Yeah.
in baseball. Like a star guy who, or at least what looked like a star guy, gets hurt a bunch, then he comes back, then he's looking weak. It would just be so Cardinals for him to come through, right? Like Wainwright will get destroyed game 1, and then Jack Flaherty, they're like, oh no, see, this is the worst nightmare of the Cardinals. I can see it now. They're like, this was the worst case scenario, that they needed Jack Flaherty to come him down, and then he's going to be great. That's what worries me. But yeah, I think that the advantage for this one, just based on starting pitching, would be the Padres. Just because I think Musgrove really is going to figure things out, and he's a smart pitcher. I think he knows what he's doing.
Now, if our two teams end up playing each other at some point here in the postseason, which is still a very big possibility, who would be your starting 3 pitchers that you would hand the ball to? Because on the Cardinals side, things have changed a lot since the trade deadline, where you guys have had pretty much the same starters the entire time. On our side of things, obviously, the old man Wainwright would be one of the main guys. I'm not sure if Michaelis is that guy. It might come down to who the matchup is, when whether the Padres are better hitting against lefties or righties, where Quintana has been steady Eddie the whole time, hasn't given up more than 2 runs in any start, earned runs, I should say, since he came to the Cardinals. And of course, Montgomery just lost his first 2 games since coming to the Cardinals, but they, obviously he didn't get creamed or anything like that. They just happened to lose those games. So if you guys are more vulnerable to the left-handers, it might be a Montgomery Quintana thing to go with Wainwright.
It could be. It could be. I think that it also depends, because I think for the Padres side of things, their like number 1 starter, I think there's a possibility it would vary depending on who they'd play in the wild card game, right? Like I think they could say Darvish, probably their best pitcher. Not even probably, he has been their best pitcher just in terms of consistency all year. Strikeout percentage is up this year, which has been awesome. Or at least up in the second half, I should say. And that's been great. But he does have a tendency to give up a lot of runs early and then be great for the rest of the game. So in a wild card like take all, it's possible they might be like, you know what? Let's go with someone like Musgrove, or maybe someone like Snell, right? That we feel They won't necessarily win the game for us and be incredible, but they won't have that potential blow up. And especially with a good Cardinals lineup, like I could see that, or a good any lineup, honestly, with the exception of the Brewers. That's what I could see kind of happening. And then Snell and then Musgrove for sure. I think those are the three. I don't know what the order would be. I think they could go Musgrove 1. I could see it. I could see them saying, you know what? Screw it. Like, this is our guy. He's our San Diego dude. He threw the no-hitter. We believe in him. Save Darvish for round 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that those are clearly the three that they're going to be rocking. And I would put up those three against nearly anybody, I think, in the NL. I think there's teams that are better. I think the Mets are better. I think the Braves, unfortunately, are better, even though I always forget who the heck their pitchers are. You know what I mean? Like, I always forget who it is, aside from former Padre Max Fried. And then you probably put the Dodgers, but it's close, man. It's close. They've got some gamers in that rotation there. So, man, that would be a fun series, but I am morbidly afraid of the Cardinals. To me, I would rather the Brewers 10 times out of 10, whatever. They'll score 2 runs in 3 games. We're good. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm certainly not looking forward to playing the Padres in the playoffs if it were to happen, because I think you're a dangerous team that is just still trying to just get it all going at the same time together. It's just been a lot of ups and downs, and if you guys get on a roll, I mean, look how the Soto's old team, the Nationals, did it when they won. They got on a roll, they figured some stuff out, and then bang, and maybe Soto snaps out of it and becomes postseason Juan again and goes bonkers. But got to get there first. Got to get there first. So I feel comfortable on our side of things that the NL Central is going to be a wrap here soon, with the magic number shrinking down each and every day. But Padres are still fighting for it. So it should be an entertaining series, to say the least. And it all gets started tonight in San Diego. It'll be Adam Wainwright taking on Mike Clevenger. So we're looking forward to it. And hopefully, if you guys do make it, Javy, if you make it, and we do get to see each other in the postseason, we can do ourselves another crossover here. I've really enjoyed it today.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. You got to do it. You got to keep the content mill going. You got to get the crossover energy going, especially for the playoffs. I mean, it's so exciting that we're finally here, even with all the other news going around. And I mean, all sorts of stuff and everywhere going on. It's great that we're almost in October, man. The best month of the year, dare I say? I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Looking good, man. All right. Well, we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Padres your first listen. Now make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. All right, Javy, I appreciate your time here today, buddy, and we'll talk real soon. Let's enjoy the series.
Of course, man. Can't wait.